Hello YouTube, this is Red Future and this is my response to Khanacademy's description of communism. Okay, given the video that I'm responding to, I'm probably going to have views from all kinds of people. Communists, capitalists, libertarians, anarchos, Satanists, who knows what else. This video is meant to give people an accurate description of what communism is and what it proposes. Because the one Khanacademy has done, well, he didn't do all that well, in my opinion. I'm not saying this because his pro-capitalist stance. However, given his video was meant to answer the question, what is communism? I feel the need to correct the ridiculous misunderstandings put forth by Khanacademy so as to give people a correct description of what we're trying to say. Now, this video will be made assuming you've already watched the video in question. So if you haven't, watch it first, then watch this so that you can see what I'm talking about. Again, this video is meant purely to answer the question of what is communism. Now, to keep this video as short as possible, I'll only be responding to statements or entire segments of the video. Alright, let's begin. Karl was the one who kind of created the philosophical underpinnings for communism. Okay, this statement he makes his first major mistake. Just reading the Communist Manifesto alone should make you realize that Karl Marx had a lot more than just a philosophical look of the world around him. If you read his book Capital, or even just a page from it, you realize that Karl Marx wrote a full-fledged economic theory going into the nitty-gritty about labor theory of value and surplus value. His writings were not a collection of ideas like utopian socialists such as Henri de Saint-Simon and Charles Fourier and Robert Owen. His was a scientific theory in economics. Lenin's contribution was how the working class should organize to overthrow the capitalist class and preserve the rule. The laborers wouldn't be able to get their wages to go up. In this section of the video, he's trying to explain what Karl Marx saw wrong with capitalism. And he butchered it. Karl Marx pointed out that private property allowed a fraction of the population to have a disproportionate amount of the wealth. He saw this as bad because it robbed the people of what otherwise could be supporting them to have a high standard of living. Khanacademy simplified this to being about wages. The problem wasn't that the people couldn't get enough pay. The problem is that even when their pay is good enough to survive, they're still just a few problems away from ruin. Look at the middle class now, or hell, even before the recession. If your car ceased to work, or your spouse died, or you came down with an illness and can't work, you're pressed to the brink. Even with welfare, it only supplements an easy situation because a country can't support everyone to the full extent they need to be. Yet despite this, despite all that you labor, a fraction of the population has a massive collection of the wealth that they barely use, except for when they're trying to get even more wealth. This was Marx's issue. Not that the people would barely survive, but that it would forever trap them in a state of limbo between having enough money and wealth to be a consumer and not having enough to do more than just live working yourself to death depending on the market fluctuation at the time. The Marxists don't give a lot of credit to the owners of capital. Whether or not capitalists earned it or not was irrelevant to communism. Sure, this is often an arguing point amongst communists, but this is not part of Marxist theory nor vital to it. The point was all of this wealth is held by only a few, while the many are trapped into their class. Yes, some can escape this by becoming capitalists themselves, but capitalism requires the majority to be workers. Not even most, can become capitalists. They are trapped in their social situation. communism is kind of the pure utopian, blah, 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 blah. At this point, he's trying to describe what communism in its full form is like. Communism isn't where the government is giving everyone what they need. That is, in a sense, of how it is in the socialist stage. However, in fully developed communism, the people themselves determine what they need. However, they aren't doing it through a giant bureaucracy that tells them what they need. At that point, the people functioning in their lives are working for themselves. But because the profit motive is removed, they are working for, whether they actually attend to or not, everyone as a whole. For example, think of it as a regular business. Except the person on top is getting paid salary that's not too much above everybody else. He's still receiving more than enough for him to live comfortably as he wishes, but instead of all the wealth produced that he turns around and sells, it's merely supplied to stores where they're doing the same thing. Only their company owner isn't receiving the lion's share of profit. Now, I'm not going to go into nitty-gritty about why I think this is viable. As I said, this video is just about a description. So just try and take from this that communism in its full form is without wealth inequality. Sure, there will be different people with different strengths and weaknesses, but those strengths are supposed to be rewarded so that everyone can have a maximum benefit. We would want the best doctors, not just a certain number of doctors to fill some quota. Pure Marxism is kind of a utopian society. No, it is not. Obviously, everything can't be perfect. Marx himself remarked on this. All communism is supposed to do is ensure everyone can have equal access to wealth. Whether or not that person finds happiness in his or her life is up to that person to seek out what they want. Marxism merely wants everyone to not be restrained by the economic conditions that they're born into. Alright, for the remainder of this video, Khanacademy is more or less correct. I felt he could go further into certain things to provide clarity, but nothing he did say was off topic. Now, to give a clearer answer of what communism is, I'm going to summarize it for the remainder of this video into one clear picture. Communism, also known as Marxism, is a theory describing how society developed over time through class struggle brought about from the different distributions of wealth. In it, it describes how capitalism, in the presence of private property, caused a fraction of the population to have a disproportionate amount of the available wealth. This divides the people into two classes, the bourgeoisie, or the capitalists, and the proletariat, or the working class. Communist theory states that this forces the majority of the people to be stuck as consumers, or being barely able to get by depending on their individual and the overall conditions at the time. Although some can escape this by becoming capitalists themselves, the majority has to remain part of the working class in order for capitalism to function. Communism states that this forces resentment in the working class, causing them to struggle against the ruling capitalist class, eventually to the point of the capitalists being overthrown, the people seizing the wealth for the good of all. They then form a socialist system that works for organizing and developing the nation to the point that the state itself becomes irrelevant and meaningless, and the government itself becomes at best a means for the people to convey a common interest, if it even still exists at all. Communist theory explains that ultimately how it manifests depends solely on how society itself develops, and they can only be predicted in general. Hopefully this clears things up. Khanacademy isn't ignorant on the subject. However, he clearly has not studied Marxist theory well enough to make a video on the subject to the standards that he himself requires of his videos. Again, I'm not saying this because he's ultimately against the theory. I'm saying that since his video is trying to do nothing more than answer the question, what is communism? He needs to get what Marxism is talking about right, regardless of whether or not he agrees. Now, if you want to know why I think communism is viable or have questions, feel free to ask and check out my other videos. If not, then oh well. but hopefully you can at least get a clear understanding of what we are trying to say. Well, until next time, see y'all later.